Here is my FMP evaluation. A project summary. For my FMP, I chose to create a game concept. My final deliverables were an animated trailer, a promotional website, a poster, and a games place. The concept was about where the player character is actively working against the player, so you're basically fighting the game itself. The themes of this game were connection and loss from when I initially started. How does your deliverable meet the briefs? My initial deliverables were an animated trailer, a promotional website, posters, and games places. My final deliverables were an animated trailer, a promotional website, 2 posters, 5 games places, and 4 character sheets. Initially, what I wanted to achieve was to create a game that could provide a feeling of catharsis as a therapeutic way to just really. Sorry.
It's okay, don't worry. Keep going.
To be able to provide players a feeling of catharsis as they overcome challenges in a therapeutic form while being provided with an in-depth narrative focus around loss and connection. Personal reasons, I just enjoy stories. I just enjoy taking traditional tropes and just flipping them and just changing them around. So I wanted to try and involve something like that, while also being able to tell an in-depth narrative story. What I wanted people to get from it was, like I said before, to experience a form of catharsis for overcoming challenging obstacles to release stress in a therapeutic way, while also being granted a good narrative game experience. What I did end up achieving was, as I progressed with the project, I feel like I focused more on the narrative overall than gameplay, but I still managed to make it that the gameplay was also telling the narrative as well, by having parts of the gameplay being focused around the whole narrative theme of connection. The personal reasons, I feel like I succeeded in creating a story that I genuinely enjoyed creating throughout this entire project. And I believe that through the challenges of having, I can't use words, I believe I demonstrated a kind of experience players would receive from the project. Can't use words, sorry.
That's okay. Keep going, it's all good.
Here are my deliverables.
If you go, see to the right hand side where it says evaluation is the orange thing. So go back on it. There. There you go, and then you can just do slideshow again.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Here are some of the posters I created. And then here are a few of my game splices. My character cards. Character sheets. And some timelines. when I was designing my characters, I wanted to make sure that every single character had some form of theme or gimmick based around their design, because I wanted you to be able to look at their character design and understand their character. For example, for the Overlord, he is a character that is constantly wearing armor to represent himself becoming more closed off and guarded. Half of his face is covered is hidden away to show off. Is hidden away to show off him being more distant and cold. And his large figure is supposed to come off as intimidating, especially and his silhouette makes him appear more devilish than he is. However, with his expression and the lighter color schemes, his lighter hair and the stars throughout his design, it shows off as him being more sympathetic, and there's more to him than what is appeared on the surface. Another thing about the stars, all his family members, I draw is there's a star motif that continues throughout them to show off that his family is something that is very important to him. And I did this for almost all the characters to just show off a bit of their personality and life through their designs. Ongoing research, one of the things I'd struggled with the most, honestly, was figuring out how I wanted to do the gameplay. So, in terms of the art style, I drew inspiration from one of my chosen artists, Tammy Chang, who I loved their simplistic yet detailed art style. For their gameplay, I referenced their games Escape Chasm and Dweller Path. In terms of gameplay, I took inspiration from Paper Mario and Steam Universe Into the Light, as always, because I like their quick time events being a good way to be able to have the player fight against the player character and make it a lot more clear when they are fighting against them. Technical research. I didn't really do that many technical things. It was more of me just improving upon skills I already had. However, I did use some YouTube tutorials to help me when I was creating impact frames, to create a pixel brush on Procreate, so I'd be able to create pixel art, and also research what would be the best as canvas size to do pixel art on. Although I did end up scrapping this, I used some Adobe tutorials to help me create some glitch text, even though I ended up scrapping this in the end. Some contextual research. I did research into other media as well throughout, with some similar themes to help me get some more inspiration, as also just take a little break from the constant workflow. Soul Food, a webcomic focused around the emotional connection through food and how it connects connection to our memories, and a game called Great Gods Grow, a game focused around the power of communication and the impact that your words have. Feedback. Throughout, my main ways of getting feedback was through forms and verbal feedback from my peers. I created forms to receive feedback from my initial designs and characters to find out what aspects people liked about them and what they didn't. So that way I could improve upon them. And once I created those designs, I went back and got more feedback on them to figure out what I got and get my hands on. Another way of peer feedback, for example, for this one, I wasn't satisfied with the design initially, so I wasn't sure, because I wanted the star in the center to be like the main focal point. So I went around and asked feedback on how they thought I could improve upon this design, and one of the things I was told was I could improve by adding more contrast with the colors to avoid them blending in, and to help provide more clarity. And overall, I prefer the final outcome, and I'm pleased with this one design for them. Another way of feedback was when explaining my FMP to others, they constantly had a more romantic take on it whenever I had mentioned the name, and I was unsure with these words being a more romantic game, and when I was explaining my FMP to others and mentioned the name, people took a more romantic interpretation of my game, and think it was a romance themed game, which wasn't what the game was about. And considering that the main focus of the game was themed around these two characters who have a familial relationship, I wanted to avoid accidentally having that form of context. So I ended up asking around my peers if they also had the same thoughts about the original name, Heartbound, which they did. So I used I asked them for suggestions for alternative names as well. This one of the suggestions being Kindred, which ended up being the final name. Problem solving. In regards to time management, I struggled a lot with staying on top of schedule, honestly. The Gantt chart didn't really help me as much as I thought it would. Instead, it just ended up causing me more stress as when I was unable to meet the deadlines that I set for myself. So to work around this, even though it's probably not that much different from actually using a Gantt chart, I just set myself quotas for every day of what needs to be done each day, which somehow felt a lot less stressful on me, and I was able to get a lot more done that way and meet my deliverables. Initially, I planned to animate my trailer on Procreate Dreams. However, there was some difficulties with storage, and the Procreate Dreams kept lagging. And due to this happening during the 3 weeks off, I was unable to use Adobe Animate. So I chose to use Procreate and animate each scene individually, and then animate them together put them all together in Adobe After Effects, which honestly I believe was the best decision, like in the long run. Other problem solving was I spent way too much time on certain things. Like I would obsess over trying to make it perfect, and would scrap a lot of things, which ended up with me having a lot of scrapped work, as you can see here, that I never ended up making it in, and also just overestimating how much time I actually would have, especially near the end of the FMP. I ended up just like having to take a step back and make sure that I got all the key points of what I wanted to make sure was in my deliverables beforehand. So, self-reflection. I believe my weakest point in this entire project was probably the research. As I had several ideas beforehand of what it is I wanted to do, and I ended up changing my project twice because of this, but not due to not having confidence in my own ideas, and I had some difficulty with finding out what I needed to research. Overall, I wish I spent more time here so I could have started off with a stronger foundation. The planning stage, despite having a little bit of a rough start, I immediately went in and created forms to get feedback on my characters and designs, which honestly helped a lot and set me on track. And I believe that this was feedback. And immediately I just started creating the environments, gameplay, mood board, and setting everything up, which I feel like from there it helped a lot, and I was back on track. Production, although I didn't really learn any kind of new technical skills, I improved upon the skills that already existed. Over this project, my animation skills have improved a lot. The overall production was stressful and time exhausting, but I pushed myself in order to make sure I'd be able to complete everything to the highest standard and show how much my own skills have improved. So overall, I've completed all the deliverables and everything I set out to do within this FMP. I believe I successfully worked to an industry standard, taking and using feedback from my peers to improve my work, documenting my process and recorded all my mistakes and learning upon them, improving my skills and learning to adjust to circumstances. Personally, I believe there's a lot more that I could have done. I feel like I could have showed more deliverables that focused around the gameplay theme and connection, and showed off some more of that gameplay. There was a lot more other things I had planned that unfortunately due to time I was unable to add in. There was a lot of struggles in this I had to face throughout the project, but overall I'm proud of what I've been able to do despite all and what I've made. Thank you.
Well done, Sirin.